All right, well, welcome everyone. This evening, we're going to be having our third installment of the Jackson Project Summer Lecture Series. My name is Adam Zimmerly. I'm here on behalf of Richmond Public Library. I'm the branch manager of the East End branch over on 25th Street. And this evening, we're going to begin, again, that third lecture. This one's going to be called Walk the Ward. In the last lecture, panelists discussed the recontextualization and preservation of Richmond's Black historical spaces, including its communities and its burial grounds. In this lecture, Jackson Wardians will talk about the arch of the neighborhood's history, from its time as a Black Wall Street to its present as the historic Jackson Ward District. Just a few things to say about some housekeeping this evening, since this is a Zoom and we are being recorded. If you wouldn't mind making sure that your microphones are muted unless you're going to be speaking, we would really appreciate it. And without further ado, Dr. Sisha Moon, go ahead and take it away for us.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Yes, my name is Dr. Sisha Joy Moon, but please call me Sisha if you ever see me out and about. Tonight, I'm representing myself and my sister, Anjali Moon, and the Jackson Project. Please forgive us, we're kind of doing double duty, as tonight, Africana, Jackson, BPM, and Field Studios are all partnering to premiere How the Monuments Came Down at Maymount. And so I have to, we're doing two dual events tonight. So it's a pleasure to have you guys. Tonight's panel is going to be just packed with equal parts of artifacts and anecdotal information from multiple generations that descend from Jackson Ward and or are currently doing work in Jackson Ward. So first up, we have Brother Gary Flowers, who's here with me at Maymount right now. Gary Flowers is a Richmond, Virginia native. He grew up in Richmond, graduated from the University of Virginia, and read law at Hill, Tucker, and Marsh. He has been executive director of the Old Dominion Bar Association, special assistant to Governor L. Douglas Wilder, public policy analyst and coordinator of electoral observers for the 1994 elections in South Africa, vice president of programs and national field director for Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition, and executive director and CEO of the Black Leadership Forum in Washington. He returned to Richmond in 2014 and became the host of the Gary Flowers Show on Rejoice Radio. He now lives in Jackson Ward, where he has become a community staple and or institution, if you ask me, with Walk the Ward with Gary Flowers. And so we are delighted to have him tonight as our moderator.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Dr. Carmen Foster, who is also at Maymount with us tonight. Dr. Carmen Foster is an inclusive leader with more than 3 decades of service in government, higher education, nonprofit sectors. She provides executive coaching for senior executives in federal agencies, and most recently served as a faculty member for the Federal Executive Institute in Charlottesville, Virginia. She is the great-great-granddaughter of an enslaved nurse and healer from the American South. Since 1991, she has served as Director of Master's Programs in Public Policy at Harvard Kennedy School, Executive Director at the University of Richmond's Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and Executive Director of the Grace E. Harris Leadership Institute at VCU. During her tenure at Kennedy School, she received a Kellogg National Leadership Fellow grant for a self-designed study throughout Ghana, South Africa, China, and Brazil to investigate the global nexus of leadership, spirituality, and healing for women and communities of color. Dr. Foster received her Doctor of Education degree from the University of Virginia and holds additional degrees from Harvard University, Clarion University, and VCU. She has also completed Harvard's program for senior executives in state and local government. Dr. Foster, it is a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Next up, we have J. Maurice Hopkins. He too is a native of Richmond, Virginia, particularly grew up in the Jackson Ward community. He is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force and a retired businessman with over 45 years of merchandising experience. He was the president of the Merchandise Sales Corporation and was an executive at the Best Products Company and Sam Solomon Company. He has served as a board of director for FICA, sorry if I said that wrong, Mr. Hopkins, Incorporated, and operated the Virginia ARC thrift stores as the principal executive managing director. He also served on the Richmond Habitat for Humanity Restore Committee and was instrumental in the erection of the Maggie L. Walker Statue Plaza. He also advocated for the Boulevard name change in honor of Arthur Ashe and is engaged with the Lumpkins Jail Project in Shockoe Bottom. Additionally, he served as executive planning and review team member for Evergreen Cemetery. He is a member of the Virginia Interscholastic Association, as well as president of the Oliver White Hill Foundation and Maggie L. Walker High School Alumni Association. It's a pleasure to have you, Mr. Hopkins. All right, next up, we have Ms. Janice Allen. So Ms. Allen is the president of the Historic Jackson Ward Association, and she served in this role since 2018. She is a graduate of Harvard University with a Bachelor's of Arts degree in philosophy. She is currently completing a book on the life and legacy of W.W. Brown, who is the founder and president of the first Black bank to be chartered in this country in 1888. She is also a volunteer docent for the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia, serves on the board of directors for 1708 Gallery, and is a member of the James River Writer and serves as a marketing consultant to local authors of children's books. Prior to test driving retirement in 2011, she enjoyed a lengthy career in the insurance industry, beginning her career at Travelers as an underwriting and marketing manager, and over time went on to work for companies such as Hartford and CNA. Over the course of her career, she also launched a marketing consulting firm and worked with local elementary schools, businesses, and nonprofits. Ms. Janice, it is a pleasure to have you. All right, next up we have Liza Mickens. So since the age of 5, Liza has been speaking publicly on behalf of her family in her hometown of Richmond, Virginia. Her great-great-grandmother, Maggie Lena Walker, yes, you heard that right, this is Maggie L. Walker, great-granddaughter, folks, who was the first Black woman to found, charter, and serve as president of a bank in America. In 2019, she graduated from JMU, where she studied communications and public relations and served as student ambassador within the Office of Admissions, while also studying abroad in London and interning in fashion public relations with Wingfield PR. Upon graduating, she moved to NYC, which is a place that still has her heart, to continue working in the fashion industry, interning at PR Consulting and working on the Gabriella Hearst, Dries Von Noten, J Brand, and Adam Selman accounts. Throughout all of these experiences, she has taken every chance to amplify Maggie Walker's pursuit of racial and gender equality. She returned to Richmond in March of last year for a week of speaking engagements, which turned into a years-long stay as the world was forced to pause with COVID-19. She has used the time to continue Mother Maggie's legacy of equality by working towards the recognition of fully ratified equal rights amendments with Vote Equality US, sharing stories of the Black History Museum and Cultural Center of Virginia in an online presence, and contributing to the DEI board at St. Catherine's School. It is an absolute pleasure to have you, Liza. All right, next up, we have 2 other women who are continuing the legacy of Maggie Walker at the St. Luke's Legacy Center. First up, we have Corinne Y. Carter. She is a community advocate and social entrepreneur. In 2013, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Communication from George Mason University with Dean's Distinction of Public Service, and studied in couple and family therapy graduate program at the University of Maryland, College Park. For the past decade, she's dedicated her life to developing youth through organizations like Trace Dreams, Not Boys. Okay now, which she co-founded in 2011 on the campus of George Mason, Old Dominion, and VCU. Currently, she also has several businesses housed under the Corinne Y. Carter Enterprises. These include the St. Luke Legacy Center Foundation, Somebodies to Somebodies, Youth Care, A New Legacy Family Services, A Renewed Legacy Senior Care, and the Glow Up Shop. She was named as part of Radio 1's iPower 92's 30 Under 30 inaugural class, earned the Metropolitan Business League's 2020 Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award, and is currently in the Leadership Metro Richmond class of 2021. All right, man. And finally, last but not least, we have my big sister from St. Gertrude, Nikki Shaw. Nikki Shaw Buchanan is a native of Richmond, Virginia. She is a graduate of Radford University, where she received her Bachelor of Science degree in psychology with a minor in criminal justice. She later received her master's degree in rehabilitation counseling with dual specializations in mental health and substance abuse from VCU. She served as clinical director, director of outpatient services, and program development director for various community-based programs. For the last 8 years, she has provided clinical supervision for LPC and CSAC residents seeking licensure and certification through the VA Board of Health Professions. Most recently, she began her tenure as Chief Clinical Officer at the St. Luke Legacy Center. As I said, it's a jam-packed, action-packed panel. We're happy to have you guys here. And so now I'm gonna pass it on to Brother Flowers.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Seisha, it is so exciting to be here tonight. I have walked the ward twice today. With walking the ward with Gary Flowers. It was not as hot as it could have been, but it's fitting that I close the evening moderating a panel entitled Walking the Ward. And I want to thank all of you tonight for participating. Let's begin. We don't have a lot of time, and we have a lot of panelists, and I want to hear from you. But if I may begin with an overarching question that's predicated on, maybe some of us know in the audience, maybe we don't, but 20 years before Wall Street was dubbed in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a Black Wall Street in Richmond, Virginia. It boasted of 300 Black-owned businesses, 7 Black-owned insurance companies, 5 Black-owned banks, and a host of hotels, restaurants, religious institutions, and educational ones as well. And so we're very proud to be associated with it. But Dr. Foster, if you would lead us off, I think it's important that we talk about the values that are found in Jackson Ward now and how they had their roots with Mrs. Walker, Mr. Mitchell, and the other heroes and sheroes of Jackson Ward. Dr. Foster.
Thank you, Gary. You know, a legacy is something that is handed down from an ancestor or from the past. It's passed down from your family, including even your reputation. So it's about heritage, tradition from one generation to another. You know, the stories of my family, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, and on, shaped me, my heritage, culture, and legacy as I pass these stories to the next generations. The West Africans called it Sankofa, go back to your roots. And the Zulu called it Ubuntu, which means I am, because we are. You know, when I think about my ancestors, their lives mattered because they instilled values of humanity despite how they were treated, from enslavement through Jim Crow, civil rights, and even today, it still matters. The Jackson Ward is about families, and I say that in a plural sense. It is about families. Yes, it's about Black entrepreneurship, but that entrepreneurship comes from collective enterprise and community values, faith, fellowship, friendships, and even food. They hold families and communities together. Values like fortitude, perseverance, racial uplift, education, civic responsibility, dignity, courage, respect. Values are a living, breathing, timeless tapestry, an indelible web that holds us together when that resistance attempts its best to tear us asunder. Values made Jackson Ward the Harlem of the South, a Black Wall Street. And the next generations must be told that true achievement is never based on accumulating wealth for themselves. Success, fame, and money are fleeting, trust me. The true wealth of Jackson Ward was not financial capital. It was social capital, invisible bonds of relationships, which you can't tally on an Excel spreadsheet. It's social capital and human capital that make financial capital happen. The legacy of Jackson Ward embodies the singular purpose of collectivism and the values of our ancestral community, abiding faith, each one, reach one, teach one, lifting as we climb, comfort during sorrow, compassion during hard times, collecting those pennies to make nickels, dimes, and dollars, making a way out of nowhere. That's values. My ancestors demonstrated these values as they showed how to use their time and treasure to serve others. I can think of a litany of ways in which each of my uncles and my aunt, and even my father, demonstrated that in our community. My dad, who had 5 brothers and a sister, always said that for him, dentistry was his ministry. But his brother Skip headed the Black Teachers Credit Union so that Black people had access to loans and credit for teachers. And he was the NAACP Richmond chapter president for 40 years. And he followed in his father's footsteps. You know, when I think about my uncle Christopher, who was an educator and a principal at Armstrong High and Benjamin Graves, and his brother Wendell, who was a postal worker that organized postal workers together as letter carriers. And even my Uncle Richard, who became the president of the Black Virginia Mutual Benefit Life Insurance Company, that the building is still there at 2nd and Clay. When I think about my Aunt Ada, who did an amazing job as a minister's wife and a wonderful mother, but who was also a classic scholar from Virginia Union, you can see that when she returned to Richmond 30 years later, her extraordinary command of Jackson Ward's history and its story and its people helped to create it as a historic district. You know, I was born on Clay Street, moved to Bird Park as the highway split Jackson Ward in the 1950s. And I grew up working in my dad's office on First Street from childhood through college. But I always heard people talk about progress of our people, opening the floodgates to our true potential. We can debate about monuments, reparations, gentrification, who's from here, who's come here, what the politics are, and who's trending on social media 24/7. But Jackson Ward's legacy, the legacy of Black communities like Greenwood and Tulsa, Haiti and Durham, Sweet Auburn and Atlanta, is how we live out our values and how we pass them down to the next generations. You know, values rise taller than any monument ever made, and values ascend as high as the North Star to lead our quest for freedom, justice, equity, and human dignity. Values are universal and timeless, and values are what Jackson Ward means to me.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. And values have brought us thus far by faith. Liza, if you would give us, like me, you are a fourth generation legacy of Jackson Ward, but give us what values your great grandmother inculcated in you by way of your parents and by way of your scholarship.
Well, I think a word that really resonated with me and Dr. Foster and what Dr. Foster said is the sense of collectivism and, you know, the real need for that. My parents grew up in Jackson Ward and in North Side, and, you know, it really was due to segregation that they depended so heavily on their communities. And with that, everybody really did look out for each other. And that is something that I feel my parents really instilled in me, that sense of collectivism. And that was really birthed with that first generation of freedom, with Maggie Walker and John Mitchell and those giants that came before us, you know, really the need to have a strong sense of community, to really be the ones looking out for each other. And I think that that really is still all encompassed in Jackson Ward. Just even walking down the street, you know, you're going to say hi to each other. I think that legacy continues today.
Absolutely. And J. Maurice Hopkins, you and Dr. Foster and I worked on the last leg of the Maggie Walker statue and plaza. But you are, I believe, the only resident who grew up in Jackson Ward. I moved in after 3 generations. But tell us about your experiences as a young man. I know you and I have filmed your testimony in the Black History Museum, but tell us now this evening, your experiences growing up and what are your fondest memories?
Thank you for having me here today. I am very pleased to be a part of this. Dr. Foster, Liza, Gary, I am close to you by virtue of your families. And let me say that Jackson Ward is family. I was raised from birth through 18 years of age, years ago, at the corner of Prentice and Clay Street. Prentice ran for 2 blocks from Clay to Lee. There was a split in between called Pulliam. And I grew up essentially behind Armstrong High School, then called Benjamin A. Graves. The Foster family lived right down the street. Gary, your mother, comes from the Navy Hill area. And I'm very familiar with your families. Liza, your grandmother, I knew, and your great grandmother, I championed for the work that she put in for the Jackson Ward community. It is a great deal to me. What is then needs to be now. We need to raise this community to the heights of its former presence to our community.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Brother Jay Maurice. And not only did my mother live in Navy Hill, but she was born across from Mrs. Walker's corporate headquarters at 911 St. James Street.
St. James Street.
With
Yes.
Ella Lee Fountain, her grandmother, and Mitchell Fountain. Now, I'm going to open it up to all of us now because I want to get your thoughts and let's chime in as you will. Please tell us a space within Jackson Ward that holds the most meaning to you. Please, as you will, chime in.
You want me to chime in first?
No. I want to open it up to the full panel. Janice?
Is that me, Gary? Are you
Yes,
calling
ma'am.
my name? Yes, first, good evening. I am so glad to be here. Thank you all very much. And I'm excited to see Jackson Ward in the audience. I'm so busy reading the audience and want to scream and say hi to everybody, but I'll try to behave. I think Gary kind of threw it to me because it will be no surprise what my answer is.
Right.
None at all. The place that holds the dearest spot in my heart in Jackson Ward happens to be the site of the first Black bank that was chartered in the United States. And that's 105 West Jackson Street. It is something about this house and that man that just captured my heart, soul, energy, interest, and it just won't let go of me. And that's kind of what it means to be a part of Jackson Ward as well. It is you find whatever it is that's your passion, whatever it is where you can lend your heart, hands, and talents, and you uplift the community in that way. Gary teases me unmercifully because I have this affection and attraction to this person in history, but he and the people that he grew up with. I mean, when you're coming up with Giles Jackson and you're running around with Reverend John Jasper and got John Mitchell and Maggie Walker in the neighborhood, A.D. Price down the street, you got W.P. Burrell, who's your secretary and your right-hand man. It's kind of hard not to be kind of like, as the kids would say now, somebody. These guys were all somebody. And as I reflect on that legacy and look back and do the detailed studying of just this one particular individual, and I feel about Brown like Gary and maybe many others on this phone feel about Madam Walker. So, you know, I know we all have the ones that inspire us, but it's the collective group that will get us all where we need to go. So with that, I could go on ad nauseum about William Washington Brown, but I would adhere to the 2-minute time frame and say this place holds a special spot in my heart, as does this community. And it gives me great pleasure to serve as the president of the Historic Jackson Ward Association.
Thank you so much. When I look at Corinne and Nikki, I'm not sure which one of you want to take this first, but the Jackson Project is rooted in celebrating the 150th anniversary of Jackson Ward. What has the ward meant to you as really the next generation? You've heard some of what we are talking about in values and how we grew up in 4 generations of connection, but you all are taking the baton and moving forward. Give us a roadmap.
Okay, so thank you everyone for inviting us. We are honored to be here and honored to really step into this legacy, into the footsteps that we're speaking of. The St. Luke building now is my favorite place in Jackson Ward. However, not too long ago, just a year ago, actually, we moved into the St. Luke building. My favorite place was on Clay Street, 206 East Clay, which my grandfather, Dr. John Howlett, was the first Black optometrist in the city of Richmond and the second in the state of Virginia. And so we started our business and our enterprise there in Clay Street. And we kind of built our foundation The Glow Shop is still housed there, the beauty salon. But that was my dream, to own that building and to build there. And the St. Luke building was never in my radar until God kind of just divinely placed us in alignment, I would say, for sure. Coming into the St. Luke building, it feels very ancestral. It feels very, it's heavy as soon as you come inside, but heavy in a good way. It's very, I just can't even put into words of how you can feel all of the moves and things that we're talking about that were done in this building here. And so the St. Luke Legacy Center, our goal is to really try and to build on what she's already, Miss Maggie has created for us to build on. I personally am just, I mean, one of her vaults are here in one of our classrooms with the kids. And so, you know, that is like our biggest historical piece, and the kids want to go inside of the vault and everyone wants to take pictures of the vault. And so it's kind of like rubbing the Apollo stone, the Apollo wood when you come into our building. But it means so much to us to continue to build on the legacy of not only Ms. Walker, but on our family as well, because they were about climbing as you lift. And that's something that my father has, Dr. Foster, you said that, but that's something that my father has instilled in me and raised me on. As you climb, you must lift. And I agree with everything that you all are saying about that collectivism. Being a part of the Jackson Ward Collective, that's a part of that resurfacing and regenerating and bringing us all together to create that collectivism that is needed here so that we can be as big and as known as the first 150 years, like Mr. Hopkins mentioned. So honored and blessed to be here, but also here physically in this space.
Yes, and Sister Nikki, if you had to blaze a trail or give us a compass for the path forward, what would you like to see, let's just say in a short era of 5 years, what would you like to see in Jackson Ward in 5 years?
I would like to see continued growth. I know that there is in different areas of Richmond that there, when you say growth, a lot of times people automatically think gentrification, but I want it to be that as it grows, that we're bringing people back to the neighborhood, bringing services, bringing different opportunities. We want our center to literally be a community center for the residents of Jackson Ward to be able to have somewhere to go to experience new things, to try alternative healing methods, to engage in different fun family activities that they maybe never tried. We are bringing community gardens. We're trying to bring, like we said, it's because the legacy of family is so strong in Jackson Ward. We want to make sure that as people start to come back and they mesh in with the people that are already there, that we continue the collective growth and the feeling of family. And that when people come back into the neighborhood, that they feel safe, that a lot of the money that is coming back to Richmond, that they don't forget about Jackson Ward and all of the things that have been done in the last 150 years, that we just continue to grow and move forward.
Well, absolutely. And when you say take it forward, historic Jackson Ward ends at I-95. Jackson Ward continued to the Chaco Valley.
Right.
And so as we lift and climb, we have to reclaim. We have to reclaim the values of which Dr. Foster spoke. We have to reclaim our lineage and ties to families of which Brother Maurice spoke. But we also have to, as the scripture says, remove not the ancient landmarks for which mothers and fathers set. And so the ancient landmarks of Baker School, still there, but it's repurposed.
Right.
The other building will be repurposed. So there is reclamation of the historic landmark registry being extended to its original boundary at the Chaco Valley and the First Street Bridge. So that's part of what we can do going forward as well. When we look tonight, and Sister Liza and Dr. Foster, I want you all to kind of co-team on this. Mrs. Maggie Walker, I think, epitomizes the values of Jackson Ward. But there has to be an internationalization of Jackson Ward. Jackson Ward is not a section of downtown Richmond, Virginia only. It is not even Black Wall Street before Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is an integral part of the transatlantic slave trade. And then how people came from the bottom of the hill in Devil's Half Acre and then started micro businesses. And so Liza, Dr. Foster, kind of talk about those aspects of expanding the reach and the recognition of Jackson Ward. Dr. Foster?
Okay, I'll go first. I was trying to do beauty before age. One thing that I'm fascinated by is after the Civil War ended, particularly for Black folks in the Richmond area, they were already skilled tradesmen. They were able to develop the ironwork that you see that lines Jackson Ward and other fabulous homes. They were able to have some particular skills that once they were freed, they were ready to be entrepreneurs on their own because finally they were getting paid and not the massa.
Yes.
So when you begin to think about how you have a people who are finally able to earn a living rather than earning a living for someone else to enjoy the fruits of the slave labor, you can understand that in some ways, Richmond had a plethora of Black businesses right after the Civil War.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And many people don't realize that that would be embedded in the history of Richmond's story. And they would have skills that not only Black folks would support, but white folks too, because they still needed their talents and their skills. So when we think about that, I think it's important to realize that Richmond is unique. And it's a paradox also as well to both be part of the horrific slave trade center, because Richmond and New Orleans are the key places to think about. And we've hidden a lot of times our story under the overpass of the interstates. But without question, there are many stories that need to begin to evolve as we begin to see the real stories of Richmond.
Liza.
Yeah, I would just add to that by saying, you know, that first generation truly is inspirational because they had no roadmap. You know, they really relied a lot on self-sufficiency, and they relied on the education that they were given and recognized, again, like you said, Corinne, lifting as you are in turn growing. You know, they realized that it was important to have foundations in education and then have your own institutions of self-sufficiency. And I think that in celebrating that, we need to realize why that was a necessity following emancipation. You know, I think that those legends really are an inspiration for us now, because again, it goes back to the sense that it was a necessity at that point, and you know, there are still needs that need to be met in this city in terms of coming into a full awareness of what happened in the past, but also, you know, how do we use this as further inspiration for the next generation?
As a follow-up, I believe that history shows us that the times make the people, people don't make the times. And so as Dr. Foster has alluded, there were micro businesses. There were sisters who were selling dinners from their kitchens as micro businesses. So Mrs. Walker, your beloved, she grows up in the Van Loo house and she's taking folded laundry. She has a sense of commerce as a little girl.
Yeah.
And so it's natural that she would become the queen of capital and the queen of entrepreneurship. But as Dr. Foster said, it wasn't in a dry forest because there were people who already were trading, who were already alive in commerce. Sister Janice, when we look at the Historic Jackson Ward Association and its role in preserving Jackson Ward, how are you dealing with the bureaucratic and the political mores, if you will, of how do we preserve a residential neighborhood that is being encroached upon on all sides by institutions? How do you walk that line?
Sorry, couldn't say what came to mind at first. I think I'm gonna really circle back for a second to that period in the 1800s. And it really is that period that gives us strength for now. And in that period when we were coming out of slavery, this whole thing about working together was, I mean, just so deep. We can't have these conversations without talking about the organizations. And of course, we can't have the conversation without talking about the true reformers, an organization that can, you know, pull people together and grow to become one of the largest Black, most influential organizations in the country. I'd like to say Historic Jackson Ward is going to be that. I'm not sure if I can make that major leap. But what I know is that in all the conversations we're having, all of us here and all of us that really love and care about Jackson Ward, whether we live here, whether we live abroad, no matter what, we've got to all band together because Gary is so right about what's happening in our city and in our beloved neighborhood. And we have to really stay abreast of what's going on. We have to follow these city plans. I know that the people from Jackson Ward are going to probably want to mute their phones when I say this because I say this constantly. We have to know what's in the Richmond 300. We have to know what these small area plans are. When they're talking about taking down Gilpin, we have to make sure they look at all of Jackson Ward. So those are the kind of lines, and thank you, Gary, for saying me, but it is we. It's the whole team here in Jackson Ward. Everybody is doing something. All of us have a part. And we have to all work together to keep our eye on the prize. And the most important thing is to make sure we have a collective vision of what we want Jackson Ward to be. Otherwise, Jackson Ward will become what other people deem it to be. So I look to all of you to continue to participate in this. And Gary, thanks for bringing that up because that's such a hard and challenging time right now. So I appreciate the question.
Absolutely. And Corinne and Nikki, as we look forward, your generation is going to be very impactful. But as Dr. Foster said, there's Sankofa, and that is looking backward at our history so that we might move forward in a more enlightened way. I want to, highlight something in the past, but then ask you to give me your ideas going forward. 122 organizations showed up to the Second Street Festival last year, either directly or indirectly, for the Renaissance Roll Call. There were people who said, you know, great grandma, she had this piece of wood that sat on the table when Mrs. Walker presided over the meetings. And we didn't know what it was, but now we do. And so we are leaning on you to carry on institutions, but build new ones. Tell me about your colleagues, your age group, and how are you recruiting them to join the noble cause and keep the bloodstained banner alive for Historic Jackson Ward?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah, I thought it through.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that our generation is doing well at trying to come together or trying to do better, I would say. I think that the pandemic and the protests and the state of unrest that we've been in over the past year and, you know, beyond, obviously, but I believe that in Richmond specifically, that brought us together. So seeing Black businesses being vandalized, having to board up our, you know, beauty salon, and seeing people come together to protect. I had so many people coming to the Glow Shop, coming to Clay Street and protecting the building during those times. And that wasn't me. I'm not outside at 3 a.m. I can't do that, you know, but we had people who wanted to protect and secure our space. Right. we have organizations who are, I mean, even just the Jackson Project itself of enlightening us about the history that we didn't even know about. So I think that with this education and new awareness, connecting together and having that shared vision of making something happen in the state that we're in, I think that we're trying, but I think we're doing a better job now than we were before. Nikki, you can.
Nikki, any thoughts?
Yes, I would say that we are trying to continue in the spirit of fellowship, that in our center, we make sure that we open that when people come, one, they feel welcome, but they, like other businesses, other community leaders, providers, they know that they can come to our center to do, I mean, we've hosted so many different things in this last year for other businesses, for other organizations, whether it be interviews, renting spaces, just allowing people to come in, because we want, again, this isn't, the St. Luke Legacy Center isn't for us, it's for everyone.
Yes.
And that's part of that's part of what I see, and that's the part of what we're trying to continue, is to make sure that that fellowship aspect continues. And I think that, like Corinne said, because of the pandemic and because of everyone trying to figure out how to pivot during that time, it really has been it's been beautiful to see, you know, that
Sure.
we've had people that have reached out to us, or, you know, then they appreciate the things that we, you know, we are able to do, the space that we have, because, and like I said, we want people to come there and feel like it's home. So
well, I want to thank you for that. I think, Dr. Sisha, are we open for questions from the audience?
Yes. Sorry, guys, we have to get to the screening.
Yes.
I hate to cut this conversation short, but hopefully this is just the first of many. You know, this is our third part in the series, and we've received pretty good community response. And so we hope to find a way to incorporate these type of conversations into the long-term curriculum of Jackson. So maybe we will open up the floor for about 10 minutes, take about 3 to 5 questions. Either you can, I guess, use the raise hand feature, put your question in chat. You can ask any other panelists, as well as Gary, if you have any questions as well. All right, we're about to do a going once, going twice now. Don't speak now, forever hold your peace. Butcher Brown is playing right now, so you don't have to beg me to.
You know, I'll give a shout out to kind of get some things stimulated, as we've talked about family, because as Maurice has said, and I'm sitting here smiling, seeing Liza and Corin, because I grew up with their parents. You know, one thing that I think is really, and Maurice was in high school with my cousin Janet. So, you know, you see this whole intertwining that goes on. It's about family. Yes. I want to give a shout out to Lucy Good Brooks, because people need to know that when you go to Gilpin Court and you go to the Friends Association, that she started that as a colored orphanage. She was there trying to help children find their families. When Richmond, you know, when children would get sold, they wouldn't know where their mama, their daddy went. And now as they're trying to come back, you know, where do they go? There were so many ads in the paper for people trying to find family members. You know, people can say what they want to about the Black community being broken and stuff like that. But when you really realize what happened during slavery, when people were chattel and children were sold away from their parents, and it happened right here in Richmond, Lucy Good was really trying to bring children together with their families in ways that really made it important for us to think about how tight those family bonds in Jackson were. We lost our families once. We do not want to lose them again. And it's my hope that those family bonds extend tighter for the next generation to keep that spirit of family and broader community alive?
Carmen, as a matter of practice, in Jackson Ward during my era, parents took in kids and raised kids. Didn't ask for a dime, but if a cousin or a child who was abandoned needed help, they stepped up and they took them in and raised them. That's what family was all about in Jackson Ward.
Well, can I just say, if for those on the line, if you do not know who Ms. Brooks is, please visit thejacksonproject.com. She will actually be part of the unveiling of the Vanguard in October at the Second Street Festival. And so look up information on her as well as her husband. They were a power couple in the city of Richmond at that time. So I thank you for mentioning her. Damien, you said, how do you become a part of the movement? Quick question, can you clarify, are you saying the movement towards historic preservation as it relates to everything from Black business to family to healthcare? Are you talking about specific organizations on the line? I'm a small business owner in the insurance and financial arenas whose office is located in Carytown. Uh-oh, Miss Janice, he said insurance now.
I love it.
And now, how can you get involved and grow his business?
Wow.
Just to clarify, can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, to clear. I think it's on the Bluetooth. Let me take this off. One moment, please. Okay, can you hear me now?
Mhm.
Yeah. So what I'm asking for is in regards to the movement, like promoting Jackson World community, getting more involved within advocating for the community. Like, for examples, is there office spaces, looking for office spaces within that Jackson World community to bring more Black businesses there? Those are the questions that I'm asking, how to get more involved with the movement in regards to that. Far as with, Black business, I know I'm Black business. I do my best to support local business so that to keep that movement going, but just talking about the Jackson Ward community.
Well, I will say, I will still defer to Ms. Janice because Historic Jackson Ward Association is ground zero for how to get involved in the space, I'd say.
And thank you, Cisha. I really appreciate that. And everyone knows what my pitch is going to be. Join us. Anyone and everyone can join the Jackson Ward Association because we know that Jackson Ward goes far beyond this geography. It's back to what Dr. Foster said. It's values, it's who we are. So please join us. And you can go to our website and see when we have our meetings and what we're doing. But also, I think the Jackson Collective would probably want to get in and speak to this too, if you're talking about businesses and things like that. So, just where you see us, join us. If your name is in this chat, you don't have to worry about me because I'm gonna find you and really bring you in. So I really appreciate the question and look forward to seeing and working with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brother Damien.
Yeah. All right. Any more questions for us? And if you don't have a question right now, but one percolates, after we get off the call, please feel free to email info@thejxnproject.com and we can forward it to the panel so that we can help to make people, help forge connections across communities.
Tisha, did the Cary Street question get answered? I can't remember it, but I know someone from Cary Street gave you a question. Was that the same person?
Same person.
Okay, sorry.
This is Robin Jones, and I want to thank you all for sharing the ward with those of us outsiders. And we always talk about how cliquish Richmonders are, and this is a great example of why you are and why you're proud and the legacy that you stand on. So thank you for that. And kind of along that line, I wonder, I was really captivated by Dr. Moon and her sister's presentation of the history. I think history can really serve to connect us, the history of, famous people that you all come from, but also infamous people that we all come from. And I wonder if you know of any like films that are going to be made based on historical figures, or if there's any intention to do any further kind of research and writing on, you know, what day-to-day life might have been like, you know, some of the personalities that get lost to time that are really lovely. So that's my question. Thank
Mr.
you.
Rob, let me give a shot at that. I was a little boy in the old building of the Richmond Beneficial Insurance Company. My father was one of the first 12 directors of National Business League and founder the Metropolitan Business League. That said, I had run up 2nd Street. I'm going to call some names that Maurice and probably Carmen will recognize. Bimbo.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Stickpin. Okay, we knew all of the colorful characters on 2nd Street. There needs to be a movie just on the characters. Bimbo was 450 pounds and he ran everything at Eggleston's garage. So that said, I think as we pull the curtain back for Jackson Ward, the cameras will come. I petitioned the governor and the mayor to sub-designate 2nd Street, the Deuce, as the corridor of culture and commerce, just as Beale Street is to Memphis. And so as we do so, the world will come, the cameras will come. We just have to stay steadfast.
And I will just chime in. It's coming. You know, I think that all of the synergies are there. And not only that, but the level of attention is starting to come. I mean, between the work that all of us are doing, I'm starting to see a national level of attention on Richmond just in recent months. I mean, between what Liza's been doing with PayPal, and I think that Mother Maggie was on Forbes. We've had PBS touchdown in Richmond. We've had Nightline touchdown in Richmond. We had Michael Paul Williams just won a Pulitzer Prize. But, come on, give it up for that. Okay. I think it's coming. So thank you, Sister Robin. I think it's coming, and I think we just have to stay true to being prepared. You know, they say success is when preparation meets opportunity. And I feel like we are just getting prepared, and that opportunity is coming. I truly and wholeheartedly believe that.
And see, just one thing to that. I have to give this shout out to a sister named Rebecca Pierce, I think is her name. And she does have a movie out called Murder on 2nd Street. And I saw it at the Maggie Walker House. That's where I first saw it. So I really want to, you know, say something has been done in the past, and it's quite intriguing, and it was very good. So I just wanted to give her a shout out there.
Also, oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead, Carl.
Sure. I also want to recommend a book called The Book of Numbers, and it's written by Robert Dean Farr. And Robert Dean Farr was a very, very bright man, but as most Black men had to struggle with just being a waiter, even though they were well educated. He was an excellent author. And as his book was published, probably in the 80s, it talked about 2nd Street, you know, and he brought out those stories about colorful figures that were around back in that day. So, I mean, you have lots of interesting stories that I think that next generations need to hear and be aware of. So thanks for bringing that question out, Robin. Thanks a lot.
Well, 2nd Street gets all the attention because of what it was. Let us not forget that 1st Street is a Black-owned, has been, continues to be the #1 Black-owned businesses in that, on that street. Not forget that. Let me make one comment before we terminate. The character of Richmond has changed. The architectural character of Richmond has changed. You don't know the city. Travel the city and you'll see what I'm saying. I shed a tear when I travel south on 95 and I see the backyard of 6 Mount Zion Church. That did not have to happen. Now, granted, they did it in an attempt to get rid of the church, but it didn't have to happen, and it can be continued under bridge or bridged across. When that happens, Jackson Ward will renew itself.
Yes.
It's a heartbreak to us who are older, and even yourselves, to see that. Now, the character of which I speak, I see encroached on Marshall Street with that tall structure. right in on Marshall Street with that apartment building. I'm gonna tell you, it breaks my heart,
Me too.
okay? So we, including the Historic Jackson Ward Association, of which you are in charge and involved with, we have to have our ears close to the ground. We have to be engaged with the city of Richmond more to understand what's happening in this principal area of town. It is important to the legacy that we are involved in. Now, these young people assembled on this panel, I charge you because you are walking in the footsteps of the first generation to revive what they did. We'll help, we'll do whatever we can to assist, but we have to save this community.
Yes.
Well, I think that's a great way to end. And then the reason I say that, you know, our next panel will be on July 21st, and the title of it is From Gerrymandered to Gentrified. You know, tonight we celebrated the beauty of what is Jackson Ward, but we also must be clear, Jackson Ward is a cautionary tale in a lot of ways. And it can be heartbreaking at times. You know, for Jackson, we have several different initiatives, and some of them are more symbolic, like the street names or understanding the 150th anniversary. But then there are some that are very pragmatic, including trying to increase the representation of Black Richmonders on the planning commissions, the urban design committees. When you look at the cycle of Jackson Ward from being gerrymandered to redline, and now being gentrified, they're still using all the same tools.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We just aren't, one, well versed on them, and two, involved enough in the community to be able to really affect change. And so I appreciate that, Brother Hopkins, because that's a really big component of Jackson, is understanding the intergenerational responsibility that we have,
Right.
to make sure that whatever the next new word is for disrupting Black spaces doesn't happen. And so thank you. I'm sorry that I did
Yes,
that. All right,
thank
all
you.
right. Hey, don't get me sitting beside a panel with Brother Flowers.
Never.
Never again. On behalf of my sister and I just want to thank all of you guys for taking the time to be with us tonight. Not only the moderator and the panelists, but those who logged on tonight. It was special, and I hope you guys felt that way. And I guess I'll turn it over to Adam if we're good to close out.
Thank you very much. So thank you so much to the Jackson Project, Mr. Flowers, all of the knowledgeable and engaging panelists this evening. Richmond Public Library has been so lucky to work with the Jackson Project, and it's been such a fruitful and insightful partnership. Again, as Dr. Sisha Joy Moon just mentioned, if you love the series, we hope you'll join us at the next lecture, Gerrymandered to Gentrified, on July 21st. And that one will be hosted by the Library of Virginia. Dropped a link into the chat for their news page, and they're going to have some links for it posted there and on their social media soon. So thanks again to all the panelists this evening and for everyone who tuned in. And we look forward to the next lecture in this ongoing conversation. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you all.
Have a good evening.